My name is Noelle, a 40-year-old housewife, and today I want to open up about my family. It's a simple setup. Me, my husband, who's the same age as me, and our recently turned 16-year-old daughter. Back in college, I met my husband. We fell in love, got hitched. Nothing extraordinary. While I tend to have a more rough-around-the-edges personality, he's the meticulous type. Obsessive about the arrangement of things, he wouldn't rest until they were just so. Initially, I thought marriage would smooth out our differences, but reality didn't play out as sweetly as I'd hoped. His meticulousness only intensified post-wedding. I found myself bending over backwards to accommodate his rules, even the ones that grated on me. Arguments became a daily affair. Days blurred into one another, devoid of any respite. Amidst this chaos, our daughter entered the scene, 2 years into our marriage. I hoped her arrival would bring tranquility, but alas, my husband's demeanor shifted drastically. Rather than adapting to our daughter's needs, he resented the disruption to his routine. Nights echoed with his sharp words directed at her tiny cries. He even declared himself exempt from any parental duties, leaving me to bear the brunt of childcare alone. Divorce crossed my mind countless times, but for the sake of our daughter, I soldiered on. I fought tooth and nail to shield her from his selfishness, even as it drained me. Yet, just when I thought I'd weathered the worst, fate dealt another blow. Despite my fervent prayers, our daughter's traits began mirroring her father's. By age 10, she critiqued my cooking and threw tantrums over trivialities. As her teenage rebellion set in, she adopted his harsh tone, turning against me in arguments. My husband, predictably, sided with her, leaving me isolated in my own home. The constant barrage of criticism wore me down until I felt like a shell of my former self. And then, one fateful morning, feeling lethargic and battling a slight fever, I struggled to maintain balance, my head spinning with dizziness. Each step felt like a Herculean effort, and I found myself confined to a chair, unable to even stand. Despite my obvious distress, neither my husband nor my daughter offered a word of comfort. Instead, their demands pierced through the haze of my illness. My husband's sharp voice cut through the air, demanding the whereabouts of his tie and socks, while my daughter echoed his self-centered concern. In my weakened state, their trivial obsessions felt like a slap in the face. Couldn't they spare a moment to tend to me, if only for today? But it seemed they were blind to anything but their own needs. Summoning what little strength remained, I bid them farewell as they left the house, only to collapse in the hallway moments later. The next thing I knew, I found myself on the living room couch, the familiar ceiling above me. Though still fatigued, a sense of relief washed over me. The uninterrupted sleep had worked wonders, rejuvenating my weary body. Despite the lingering fog of sickness, there was a strange comfort in this half-awake state. But as evening descended, reality came crashing back. Panic surged through me as I realized the time, past 5 in the evening, and the mountain of unfinished chores awaiting me. With no time to spare, I hurried to the kitchen, cobbling together a meal from whatever leftovers I could find. Just as I began to wrestle with pots and pans, my daughter arrived home. Her timing couldn't have been worse. Unapologetically, she commented on the delay in dinner, brushing off my hurried apology before retreating to her room. Soon after, my husband returned from work, adding to the chaos of the evening. "What, you're still cooking dinner?" My husband's words dripped with discomfort, his meticulous routine disrupted by the sight of me still in the kitchen. His routine after work was sacred, so any deviation must have set off alarm bells. With barely a word, he retreated to his room, the rustle of his changing clothes signaling the passage of time. I glanced at the clock, just 15 minutes left. Desperation fueled my movements as I chopped and stirred, every second ticking away ominously. Despite the rushed preparation, I managed to plate the meal just as my husband emerged. Relief washed over me momentarily, but it was short-lived. "What the hell is this? Who could eat this?" His outcry pierced the air, his dissatisfaction palpable. Confusion and frustration bubbled within me. "What's wrong?" I dared to ask, only to be met with an inexplicable surge of anger from him. "You overcooked it. The color is off, and the vegetables aren't evenly cut," he criticized, his tone cutting. "I'm sorry, I was pressed for time today," I offered weakly, feeling the weight of his judgment bearing down on me. "Pressed for time? You're not working. You have plenty of time," he retorted dismissively, igniting a firestorm within me. As if my efforts were insignificant, as if my struggles meant nothing. Why do I have to be spoken down to by a husband who doesn't even notice my discomfort? I have no time at all. I erupted, the floodgates of frustration bursting open. His reaction was unexpected. A step back, fear flickering in his eyes. What struggle? House chores can be done at your own pace, isn't it easy? He challenged, his ignorance a dagger to my already wounded pride. Fury coursed through me. What do you know? It's not like I can just do them at my own pace. I couldn't hold back any longer. I was feeling really sick today, you know. I pushed through and made dinner, and you didn't even take a bite. How do you think that makes me feel? Tears welled up in my eyes, emotions bursting forth like a dam breaking. Seeing my husband's face pale, I managed to rein in my emotions, though I was still short of breath, dizzy from the shouting. I awaited his response, hoping for a simple apology, a shred of understanding. But his words quivered with defensiveness. Do you have any idea how much I struggle to support our family in this world? He countered. So you're saying I'm just living easy and free? That's just an excuse. I'm not your slave, I shot back, refusing to be silenced. But the tension escalated, and I sensed his anger building, threatening to erupt into something more violent. I braced myself, ready to stand my ground. Before I could utter another word, our daughter burst from her room, shock evident on her face. Your voices can be heard outside. Stop it, it's embarrassing. She scolded, her interruption a jolt to our heated exchange. As her words sank in, we fell silent, the weight of her admonition settling over us. I began to explain the situation, but as she listened to both sides, her judgment was clear. Honestly, Mom, you're the one who's wrong, she said bluntly, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. Shocked to the core, I could only stare in disbelief at her unexpected verdict. Why? Because housework is your job, isn't it? Dad can't afford to take time off work, even when he's not feeling well. My daughter chimed in, her words laced with a hint of accusation. Her agreement with my husband's sentiments only fueled the fire of resentment simmering within me. As my husband spoke, his face etched with disapproval, I felt a surge of indignation. Mom is always late with her chores. Even today, you haven't done the laundry yet, he added, his criticism cutting deep. Their words shattered the fragile facade of composure I had been clinging to. So you're both saying I'm not trying hard enough? I questioned, my voice trembling with hurt. Maybe you're not trying hard enough. I could probably do it better and faster, my daughter interjected, her words like a dagger to my already wounded pride. Yeah, you're too laid back. I bet we could manage without you, Mom, she continued, her callousness slicing through me like a knife. Was I truly dispensable, I wondered? Had I become so insignificant in my own home, so easily replaced? The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, driving me to flee the suffocating atmosphere of our house. Before I knew it, I found myself in a darkened park, my feet aching from the hasty escape. As I sat on a bench, the chill of the night air seeping into my bones, I realized I hadn't even bothered to put on shoes in my haste. My tears had long since dried up, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. How long had I been sitting here, lost in my own thoughts? Even in the silence of the park, their harsh words echoed relentlessly in my mind, a constant reminder of my perceived inadequacy. Resentment simmered within me, a smoldering flame fueled by their callousness. I vowed never to forgive them, my family who had trampled upon my feelings so carelessly. With a newfound resolve burning quietly within me, I returned home. The next morning, I set about my tasks with a steely determination, my every movement a testament to the strength of my fighting spirit. I meticulously prepared a menu fit for a feast, as extravagant as a dinner at a famous restaurant. As the final touches were made, my husband and daughter entered the living room almost in unison, their faces void of any acknowledgement towards me as they took their seats. Come on, let's have breakfast, I announced, hoping to break through the icy tension that hung in the air. My daughter, rather than my stoic husband, spoke up. Mom, what's going on? Today's breakfast is really fancy, she remarked, her confusion evident. It's your 16th birthday today. Did you forget? I asked gently, hoping to stir some recognition. Yeah, I did forget. You should at least remember your own birthday, right, Dad? She turned to him, seeking validation. After a brief exchange of curt words, they both awkwardly began their meal. The atmosphere was strained, lacking the usual warmth and laughter that accompanied our family gatherings. It was evident they were scrutinizing my every move, perhaps unaware of the hurt they had caused or simply unwilling to acknowledge it. While I could understand my husband's aloofness to some extent, my daughter's behavior stung deeper. She was the child I had nurtured and loved, hoping she would grow into a compassionate and understanding individual. It's often said that daughters resemble their fathers, but with proper upbringing, she should have also inherited a sense of empathy and consideration. Regrets? Sure, I have them, but dwelling on them now seems pointless. Listen, I began, and just that single word shifted their expressions. What? What's going on? My husband's voice wavered as he questioned. Starting today, I'm leaving this house, I declared, and their faces drained of color in unison. Hold on, why? They both protested simultaneously. You said you could do the housework better than me, I reminded my husband, my tone firm. I didn't say anything like that, he retorted, but I cut off my daughter's potential argument before it could begin. Whether you remember saying it or not, you did. And you, I turned to my husband, said I have more free time because I'm at home. It's just an excuse. He didn't respond, and I pressed on. Don't misunderstand. I'm moving to another house, starting today, but that doesn't mean I won't come back here. And stop, today's my birthday, right? You're going to celebrate, right? My daughter pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. I chuckled at her plea, but my resolve remained unshaken. I'm sorry, but I'm serious about this, I replied calmly, watching her crumble before me. With that, I quietly stood and left the house, ignoring their desperate screams behind me. That day, I booked a hotel room nearby, then secured an apartment on a monthly basis, starting the process of building a new life. Even amidst the flurry of activity, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls, apologies and pleas from my daughter. But my husband remained silent, unable to admit his fault. I kept receiving messages from him, each one more accusatory than the last. What you did was outrageous, he insisted, but I left all their messages unread, refusing to engage. It's amazing how convenient it is these days to convey my intentions without saying a word. 2 nights after leaving the house, I returned home briefly. As I opened the front door, my daughter sprinted towards me with surprising speed. Mom, you came back, she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around me in a tight hug. I just came back to pick up something I forgot, I replied, gently disentangling myself from her embrace and making my way to the living room. Nothing had changed in the living room, as expected. However, the kitchen was a mess, littered with convenience store lunchboxes, instant ramen cups, and discarded bottles. The state of the bathroom was even worse, with unwashed laundry piled high. Both my husband and daughter often complained about my cooking and laundry skills, yet they seemed incapable of managing these tasks themselves. But this disaster was no surprise to me. It was exactly what I expected when I left. My husband was in the living room, but his pride prevented him from meeting my gaze. With a heavy heart, I pulled away from my sobbing daughter and left the house in silence that day. 1 week later, when I returned home to check on them, the house was already overrun with garbage. These two, who never bothered to clean up or even take out the trash, had allowed the mess to escalate far beyond my expectations. My daughter's face emerged from the chaos, horribly dirty, and her hair disheveled. Despite her age, it was clear she was struggling to manage even the basic aspects of daily life. And finally, at this breaking point, my husband admitted his fault. I was wrong. I'm really sorry, he confessed, kneeling amidst the rubbish, his forehead pressed against the debris. But I couldn't simply forgive him with a mere apology. Don't think you'll be forgiven just by prostrating yourself, I told him gently, feeling the weight of the moment settle over us. His despair was palpable, his eyes wide with realization. Beside me, my daughter broke down in tears. If you truly regret your actions, start by cleaning up this house. If you can't even do that, I'll divorce you, I declared firmly, my resolve unwavering. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, my husband jumped into action, clumsily attempting to tackle the mess. In the end, I took charge of the cleanup, issuing instructions to both of them as we worked tirelessly to restore order. It wasn't until 3 days later that the house was finally pristine once more. Now, shall we continue the birthday party? I asked cheerfully, looking down at my husband and daughter, who now sat in the freshly cleaned living room. From that point on, my husband took over all the housework duties. Even my daughter, who had once sided with her father, now stood by my side. Though those days were difficult and painful, I now realize they were necessary for our family to truly understand the importance of responsibility and respect.